How do you think big and achieve holistic success while managing stress and uncertainty? This is the Leaders of Transformation podcast. And on this show, we interview difference makers and world changers who are transforming for good. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Nicole Jansen, and our guests today are Lisa McCarthy and Wendy Leshgold. These amazing women work with individuals and large organizations to help them get refocused, stay on track, and achieve their bold vision, both personally and professionally. And today we're going to get a taste of the work that they do and how they do it. So, are you ready? If you're watching live, post in the chat, I'm ready. And tell us where you're listening from. We have listeners in over 140 countries, so you just never know who's going to show up. And during our interview, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions and leave your comments, so you can post them in the chat, and then we'll address those as we go along. We'd love to hear from you. This podcast is brought to you by my coaching and training company, Discover the Edge and Leaders of Transformation. I have both those companies. And if you're a leader who wants to be better, do better, and make a greater impact, book a consult with me and let's talk about your situation, your goals, your opportunities, and the breakthrough that's necessary for you to become the leader that you're capable of being. You can go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching and click on the scheduling link that's provided. All right, let's bring our guests on. Lisa and Wendy, excited to have you here on the Leaders of Transformation. Welcome.
Hello, nice to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. And I'm excited for what you're going to talk about because in this day and age right now, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of uncertainty, and people are really needing some bright hope. They're needing some encouragement. They that bold vision is got to be revamped. And so I'm excited to hear what you have to say about that. But as we start off, let's talk about, first of all, what is your mission and the goals of your company and how you guys got started and working together.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Wendy, and Lisa and I, we started our career roots were in the corporate world. So we both, I was in advertising. Lisa was in media. She led big sales teams, and we saw really firsthand what people, what we were dealing with, really raising families, having children, and we saw what our teams were dealing with in terms of just like managing stress and the pressure, the pace, the always on, aspect of work. And, we saw that people really felt like they would have to sacrifice a lot personally in order to kind of climb the corporate ladder, as it was. And a lot of people just felt like, I can't be happy in both domains. It's just not possible. And, and if you're lucky, like maybe you can, have a hobby, or maybe you can, have a good relation, a good marriage, but a lot of times you were really sacrificing. And we saw the impact that this notion had on people, on their happiness, on their sense of just peace and overall fulfillment. And we both felt like it didn't have to be that way. And that was really the insight that, helped us launch our company.
Yes. And rewinding, it's funny. So Wendy and I have known each other since we're 10 years old. We actually met in sleepaway camp, and her family kind of adopted me. And when we were younger, we used to brainstorm companies like, oh, let's start a dating service, or let's do, X, Y, and Z. So, it took a few decades to pull it off. But when I was 45, I was at a crossroads, and I was leading, as Wendy shared, I knew I was leaving the large media company that I was at, and I had two choices. One was to go do what I had been doing, which was obviously the safe, lucrative, secure route, or I could do what we call in our Fast Forward program, throwing your hat over the wall, which is committing to something that really inspires you, and it's uncomfortable and you don't know how to do it, but it's worth playing for. So Wendy and I set out to create a company, both training and coaching, that based on the premise that when people are living their best lives, they do their best work. And we wrote a curriculum. We call it a system of power principles. And the foundation of it is what we call a bold vision. And this is all about helping people and teams throw their hats over the wall and take time to think, really define 1 year from today, what does success and happiness look like for you? Even if you don't know how to get there, even if you could fail. And this is very provocative because most human beings are just reacting. React, fire drill. What do I need to do to keep my job by Friday? Maybe take a few walks around the block now that, we're still working from home. And this really forces people to step off the treadmill and think long term. And we have these 7 questions that help people gain clarity, both professionally and personally, on, well, how do I define success and fulfillment? And so that's been game changing. And then the rest of the program is, here's very actionable tools to help you make your bold vision a reality.
Well, there's a lot of training, things that you can do. You can go into companies. We can do strategy and technique and skills and leadership skills and all of that. But to your point, there's certain fundamental things that you have to have in place in order for all of that to make sense. It's like a few weeks ago, I had Art Jansen, who talks about the art of alignment on this show. And, if you're not aligned, it's like people can be working hard. They can be performing at a high level, but for what, right? Like, where are we going? What are we doing? And that's why I was excited to have you on to talk about that, because how often do we see that even high performers getting to a point where they say, how did I get here? Like, this isn't actually what I wanted, or settling for, like you said, settling for the just surviving and getting through. And we're seeing that, of course, definitely over the last 2 years, where companies are just, and leaders are just like, if we could just survive, through this and make it through to the other side, that would be a win. Yes. And difficulty, uncertainty, these types of times also lends itself to a tremendous opportunity for growth and innovation. So can you talk a little bit about that in terms of maybe what you've noticed in the industry? Like, that's what I've noticed, but what you've noticed in the industry. And so, maybe some of our listeners can relate to that in terms of what they're going through. And then we can talk a little bit more about in detail what you're actually doing.
Yeah. Well, it's been a very challenging 18 months, as you've said. And, the companies we've worked with over the last 9 years have always been high pressure, always on. Many of them are hyper growth. So those fundamentals haven't changed. Just things have gotten, worse because there's not, the lines are blurred between work and home. And as you know, a lot of people have left the workforce for various reasons, whether it's, women or men that had to now take care of their children, or epiphanies about, I just don't want to do this anymore. So that's resulting in leaner teams and a talent war in many industries. And so with that as a backdrop, leaders are recognizing that well-being is key to retention and key to growth, and they're making it a priority. And it's interesting because, we've always addressed people's whole lives. Like, that for us has been, the whole key to how do you help people really play their best game every day. And now it's just needed more than ever. COVID has been an accelerant in so many ways because people are reassessing their lives, and the employers that are going to be the best position to retain people are the ones who are helping people to not only thrive and grow as a professional, but also, really take care of their whole lives. So that's one big trend. Well-being. How do I help my people, using your language, thrive versus survive? Like, one of our big clients is Amazon, and Amazon is not changing anytime soon in terms of the pressure and the pace, but we're working with an extraordinary leader there who literally said, my legacy will be that in my engineering org, he has a very big org, my people will be thriving versus surviving. And he wants to give them tools to control what they can, which is a lot, but sometimes human beings don't act that way. And the other trend we're seeing is that life was already in the old days back-to-back meetings, but now it's all back-to-back video meetings. And people actually, even though you're looking at the screen like this, they actually feel isolated. And so leaders are looking at, how do I create experiences where people feel connected? And for us, even though last March we were extremely uncomfortable thinking, how do we keep our business alive? We've actually seen now demand for Fast Forward because it gets people truly connected as human beings. We already know the dog's coming on the screen, the baby's on the screen, but like, how do you have deeper conversations that you wouldn't even have in the company kitchen? So those are some trends we're seeing.
Yeah, and to your point, actually, there's a lady that I'm going to have on the show in the next couple of months, and she's going to talk about, she wrote a book called Unmute, and talking about video conferencing and how to do it well, and how to, like what you just talked about, it's like recognizing that all this stuff is going to happen around you. I heard a story of a leader who was having to teach her leaders that she works with to keep in mind what's happening behind her, because somebody's 15-year-old son woke up and walked behind her while she was on video, and he was half dressed, scantily dressed. And so created quite the show for those watching. And so these are things that, we know that's all going to happen. But in the midst of that, like you said, people are still not connecting, even though they're getting a chance to see a little bit more of the life, the holistic life of a person. But what does that actually mean in terms of the true connection? So that's really important.
Video is very transactional. People come on to a video conference and they go they want to get in and they want to get out, and they want to get off, and they often want to turn their camera off, and it just winds up being transactional, which definitely, detracts from the sense of we're connected as humans. We know each other. We care about each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So what makes the bold vision exercise that you have, because there's lots of people who do vision exercises, but something about your vision exercise is unique, sets you apart from all of those other ones, in terms of, not to say that they're not great, but that specifically, like companies like Amazon and TikTok and Google and all those other companies that you work with are really seriously interested in applying into their organizations. What is the differentiator, if you will?
Yeah, Lisa, I'll answer that one. So when we came at this exercise, one of the things that we recognize about people is that people tend to be, they're very risk averse. People don't want to take big chances, especially not at work, right? Because they want to look good, they want to hit their goals, whatever their goals are. And, when you take risks, potentially bad things can happen. And there's a lot of research about people's avoidance of risk and their avoidance of failure. And it's uncomfortable for people. People don't like that. And yet we also know intrinsically that there is huge value in setting bold aspirations for yourself, but it's definitely not within most people's comfort zone. And when people set goals in organizations, they typically like to set them low. They're all work related versus any goals about anything else in your life outside of the work domain. Like, so that is, and they tend to be only focused on concrete accomplishments versus anything that was a little bit more intangible, like things like how you show up, right? People don't set goals for how they want to be. They only set goals for what they want to do and accomplish. So, our bold vision exercise is different because, number one, we ask people to fast forward a year out or more, sometimes 2 years. We ask people to write it as if it's already happened, right? Which is different than how people usually write goals. And we give people the permission to write it not knowing all the steps to accomplish it. And that is freeing, scary, yes, uncomfortable, yes, but freeing for people to write something down. It helps people get clarity about, gosh, if I was really dreaming in color and it was a year from today, what would I love my whole life to look like? My work accomplishments, my personal life, my relationships, how I would grow and improve, right? A year from today, what I'd love to be better at, what I'd love my outlook to be like in a year, how I'd love the culture of my company to be in a year. So, while people definitely have to get used to this, they get comfortable being uncomfortable over time. We have clients who've been doing this for, 8-9 years. Every year, it's kind of like, okay, take out your vision, throw your hat over the wall again. What would be awesome in the year ahead, even if you don't know how, even if you could fail. And if you do fail, people just get a higher tolerance for failure, for, okay, I didn't achieve everything in my vision, but I achieved a lot more than I would have. And I feel so proud of what I accomplished. And the other thing is we tell people to share it with other people in their professional circle. And that's a huge thing for connection. Like we talked about, how in today's workplace, people are a little bit isolated. One of the things that brings them together is sharing their dreams, sharing their aspirations. It makes people feel like, oh, okay, I didn't know that you were interested in, X, Y, or Z in your personal life, that you that you love playing, field hockey on the weekends. I didn't realize that about you. And then it also gets them really aligned behind, a common goal, right? So that when you have a whole team aligned behind a common purpose, there's a lot more likelihood that they're going to get there than if it's disjointed and everybody's kind of playing for something different.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that people are afraid to set a goal. And I've noticed this too, is that they're afraid to set a goal unless they know how to do it. And that just talk about that in terms of maybe Lisa, you jump in here and talk about how that limits the possibilities because, and maybe even the reverse. I think about like when you put it out there, it's amazing what happens as a result of that and how your brain actually starts to come up with solutions. Can you speak to that, Lisa?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think if for any of your listeners, we've all done this. People, over time, professionally and personally have put out, not kept their ambitions and dreams to themselves, like put it out there and said, I'm running a marathon, I'm getting a new role, I'm getting that job, I'm getting married, whatever it is. And you put it out there. And then even though you don't know how to do it, that declaration then becomes a catalyst for figuring it out. People ultimately are creative and resourceful. And most of the time they're asking for help. Like you share your vision and people go, I want to be part of that. I want to help you. How can I, what can I do? And particularly as a leader, goals that are just like, double the business or whatever, it's not enough. You really have to paint a picture of imagine the end of the year, we are high-fiving. We are just so proud of our results. Let's like get it down on paper. Every year we're putting, very aggressive goals on paper. And most of the time we're not hitting them. But I know that we're getting so much further than we ever would have. We're making the calls, on Monday versus Friday at 3. We're getting unreasonable about what new products would address that need. And that's what we're seeing in all of our clients, that, once they get it, first of all, if you get it down on paper, it's 42% more likely to happen. And then if you share it out loud, that number goes up. People's actions are always correlated to the future they see as possible. So most people operate from the present to the future. We're out to have people go to work on their future and then reverse engineer, whether it's, the business, your career, or your health, or an important relationship. And that's transformative for most people who are focused on short-term, present to future, and, today's list.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would just add to that, one of the things we do in the program is we ask people to think about for themselves, what are the things that are preventing them from playing big, that are preventing them from writing out a bold aspiration. And that's a very valuable reflection because it's not something people are thinking about. Really thinking about like, what is a belief you have about yourself or about someone else or about a team or about your circumstances that's limiting you. And having them like think about that, write it down. We actually have them share it with another person. It's very freeing and allows people to say, okay, maybe I could park that. Maybe I could park that so that something else could be possible.
Yeah, it's kind of like suspending your unbelief just for a little bit
Exactly.
to see what could happen. I mean, you already know the outcome there of what you've been able to create because that's how you got to where you are.
Yeah.
But if you just suspend that for a little bit and see what's possible, you can always go back to this.
Yeah.
But you might not want to, of course, because you're going to experience something so much better. That's so good. That's so good. Now you have some outcomes, favorite outcomes, stories. I love like bringing it to the practical, if you will, and the real life examples so people can hold on to and maybe even just inspire them and encourage them right now. Because like I said in the beginning, Lord knows that people need some inspiration right now just to get up and go and believe that it's possible. So maybe tell us a little bit, some of those stories.
I mean, we've worked with, over the years, over 100,000 people. We have so many people who have had incredible results. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you a story, and like Lisa, probably, we have a million stories. But, the interesting thing is that a lot of times these stories, they deal with people's career, like people have had promotions, like the things you'd expect in a work program that they would have. But they've also had like other results that are you wouldn't expect in a work program, like people getting married or changing their role or taking on, like improving a relationship, like dramatically improving a relationship that maybe was, dysfunctional, reigniting their marriage, things like that, reinventing themselves professionally. That's, something that's happened. So one example is that I love to share about is that there was a woman that we had in a program, and she was at, successful career. She was in a big financial services company, and she had been in the same role for a while and doing really well in the role. And then she was kind of advised by some of her higher ups, you should pitch that big job over there, right? There was this big role in the company that was open, and some folks said to her, you should go for it. And she, was a mother with 2 young kids. So she had I think at the time it was like elementary school aged children, like 9 years old, 6 years old, something like that. And she kind of felt like, okay, I'm kind of holding it all together with, paper clips and, Elmer's glue. And if I go for that big role, I'm never going to be able to keep my life working. I won't be able to, my family will fall apart. My marriage might fall apart. I'll fail my children. And she had all these, what we call limiting beliefs really about herself and what was possible. And when she did our program, she kind of thought about it and said, I'd really love to have that role. Like that would, if I kind of dream in color a year out, I would be doing that role, but I'd also have my life working. And I'd be bold enough to ask for what I needed so that it could all work. And that's exactly what she did. And she, probably never would have done that, but she pitched the role. She got the role. She said, these are my conditions. This is what I need in order to be able to do the role and have my life work. And they said yes, because they wanted her in the role. And I don't think she ever would have done that. And she's still in that role. She's crushing it. And she's happy. Her life works, her marriage works, her family works. And I think it was all emanated from declaring a bold vision.
Yeah. I love that. I was just going to say, one of the things that came up when you shared that is pointing out that when you have that bold vision and you step into that, just even entertain the thought, it requires something different of you.
Totally.
And challenges you to think beyond the box. And so, like you said, she asked, for something that she wouldn't have asked for before, but it was because she created that bigger space for her to be able to step into it. Like we need to, sometimes I think we just live in such a small container.
Yeah.
And when we expand ourselves, one of my coaches and mentors used to say, when you take up a bigger space, you are like a bigger magnet for things to show up in your life.
Absolutely. And you see things that you wouldn't have seen even.
Yes. Yeah. Because you didn't need it then.
Right.
Because it wasn't, your vision wasn't big enough to require it. But when it's big enough, then all of these opportunities start to show up. Lisa, did you have something you want to share?
Well, I just have more stories. I have more
Yeah.
cool stories because we have so many stories like that one of people just throwing their head over the wall and stepping into new roles that were uncomfortable and exciting. But then we had one woman who decided to learn how to swim. That had always been something that, she just thought it's not going to happen for me. She learned how to swim. Another woman who became a prolific writer, like her narrative was, I just can't have this big job, 2 kids, and write. And she literally, I mean, we follow her on LinkedIn now. She's extraordinary. She just writing is her passion, and she's making it part of her job, but she really made it happen. And then this is really a heartwarming story. We had a man who was in the program, and he was obsessed with sports, and he shared that his son was not. His son was really into science and math. And he, one of the questions we look at in the Bold Vision exercise is to describe the quality of important relationships, to look at the relationship with yourself, professional relationships, and personal relationships. So in this one, he threw his hat over the wall and he imagined a future where he was really close with his son, because he didn't feel that way when he did the program. So he said, my son and I are really close and connected. And he didn't know how he was going to do that. And then, going back to that earlier point, that future compelled him to get curious and figure out, well, what does my son love to do? What can we do together? And they ended up learning how to do Minecraft. And even though, the father didn't have an authentic interest in that, he got interested because that was a way to connect with his son. And he came back to open a future session, and he just said how game changing that was for him to really feel close with his son in a way he never had. And so that always gives me chills when I tell the story. And we've even had more transformative where, well, not more, but equally transformative, where we've had participants that are really have a negative narrative about their boss, or like some, colleague at work that they wish would get fired, but they're not getting fired. So it's like, okay, throw your head over the wall. We have a productive working relationship. We may not be going out on Friday night, but like we have common goals. And when you give up negative energy and recognize that the other person is probably never going to change, so what can you do to change? That's like, less suffering, more peace, as we like to say. And
Yeah, and one thing I want to add is that when Lisa shared about the man and his relationship with his son, and when you sort of connect the dots to, well, how does this relate to him being better at his job?
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that people, when people are suffering in their personal life, it detracts from who they're able to be and what they're able to bring to their professional life. It just does, because we are human beings, we're whole people. And when you're feeling, pain about relationships that are really essential to you in your life, you bring that to work. And it's a gift that employers can give their people to be able to give them the tools and the insights to be able to bring their best selves to work, because the rest of their life is also working. So it's all very interconnected.
Yeah. Yesterday I worked at, I did my first live offsite since March of 2021 at JP Morgan Chase. And the CEO, who I've worked with many times, Kristen Lemkow, she gave them, the Bold Vision workshop as her emblematic of Employee Appreciation Week. Like, she's like, this is my gift to you, because the pace, the pressure, you guys are like, going to make it happen. And here's a gift to thrive while you're doing it. So, when you're living your best life, you do your best work. It all goes back to that fundamental premise. And how do we help people do that?
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. Now you talk about power outages and what happens when you have setbacks. And I think it would be remiss to not talk about that before we end, but I love where we started, because we're talking about the possibilities of what can happen. And to your point, when you're living your best life, you're going to do your best work. That is so true. We are holistic people. You can't ignore. It's not like we leave ourselves at home and then go to work. It doesn't happen that way. Companies have tried to make that and enforce that on people, and it's never really worked. And especially nowadays, and especially with millennials, that's not going to fly. So I love that. But let's talk about those power outage. How do you get people back on track when they have a setback? Maybe they've lost their confidence, because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who are in that position right now where they're just not sure how to get back on the horse.
Yeah, I mean, I think first I want to just define, like, when we use the term power outage, which I think we coined that term, we were sort of thinking, okay, you're going through your life, the sun is shining, you're happy, and then something happens. And for most people, this is a regular occurrence. I mean, multiple times a week. The bigger the game you're playing, the more likely it is you're going to have power outages. And so this is sort of a temporary loss of power, right? And some power outages can be very small, sort of low-level power outages. And some of them could be massive grid failures, and then the choice becomes, so there's no choice as to whether you're going to have a power outage. The question is how long you're going to stay in it and have it really take away from your peace, your happiness, your power, your productivity. So that's where we sort of came in and sort of gave people the term power outages, because even just having the language around it is helpful to define it. And then we also really help people to figure out, how do we call it clearing a power outage. How do I get out of a power outage faster? So we thought it would be fun for your listeners, because I don't know about your listeners, but I am having power outages all the time. And I've had one recently, and Lisa is, as not only my business partner, but my best friend for like a million years, has helped me many, many times to clear a power outage. So we just thought we would demonstrate what that looks like. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to pretend that I'm still having this power outage that I did have last week. And Lisa's going to do what she actually did to help me. Okay. So Lisa, I am having a massive power outage. And here's what's going on with me right now. I'm so proud of how much I've slowed down during the pandemic. I really slowed down. I kind of cleared a lot of non-essentials off my plate. I kind of felt this overwhelming, this great sense of peace and calm. And I just feel now like it's going away again. Like I'm going back to how I was before. And I'm so I'm stressed. I feel overextended again. I see what's happening to my calendar, and it's, feels out of control. And, my husband is he loves to be social. He's putting all these things on the calendar, and people are coming out of the woodwork, just asking for things, and work is out of control. And I'm just so mad at myself for letting my life get this way again.
Yeah, I really get it. What else?
Well, I just feel like people don't understand when you say no. And so it's really hard to say no. And I feel a lot of pressure to say yes. And that also doesn't feel good. Then I get pissed off at people. I get resentful. How dare you even ask me to go out for dinner? Which is ridiculous, but I, really feel that way sometimes. And I just feel depleted at the end of the day, exhausted and depleted. And I feel like it's my fault, because I'm angry at other people, and I'm angry at myself for letting this happen.
Got it. Okay. Anything else? Is that to get it all out?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. So what now? What do you think you should do now?
Well, now that I've said it all out loud, I just feel like I need to take a breath. Taking a breath feels pretty good.
Yeah.
It's exhausting to be angry. It feels exhausting. And so now that I've taken a breath, I think the first thing I'm going to do is just see what I can say no to.
Yeah.
What can I just say no to, or delegate to somebody else?
Yes.
And it's actually exciting to even think about doing that. That's actually getting me a little excited.
Yes. Delegate and decline. Two of my favorites. How do you feel now?
I feel much calmer. And I can see that there's more I can, that's in my control versus things spinning out of control. Yeah. And that's a good feeling to have.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lisa, for listening.
Good for you. Power outage hotline. I'm always here for you, babe.
So that is, what Lisa did not do is she did not give me advice. She did not tell me what to do. She listened until I had said everything that needed to be said. And that is what it looks like to clear a power outage. And as simple as that is, right, people always think they have to like, oh, I have to have all the answers. I have to have the advice. And actually all you have to do is be there as the receiver of, the other person's stuff, and then let them figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. The other thing I want to build on, because, where we started was not only setbacks, but like a loss of confidence, is that when you're experiencing a loss of confidence and you are confident, well, you're willing to be vulnerable and share this with another human being. And may we all have one or two human beings in our life that we could do that with. If I was suffering a loss of confidence, which happens, on a monthly basis, I get triggered by things and I start beating the, what out of myself. And then I call Wendy. She does not try to change my mind, because if she were to say to me, Lisa, that's not, I disagree. You're amazing. That would not be helpful. That would not be helpful. Like if I'm having a power outage and not feeling confident or organized or capable, I just need to get it out. I will be able to reset. But I don't want anyone to try to change my mind if I'm really feeling like in the gutter right now. I will come out. And that's what a lot of people try to do. So it's another way of supporting people, having people feel heard and believing that they have the power to reset. And this is one step to getting there.
That is so good. And thank you, ladies, for running that scenario for us, because I think it's hard. You can explain it, but it's one thing, it's an entirely different thing to see it actually unfold and to take a real life example and to even show your own vulnerability in terms of some of the things that you go through. Because I think there's a lot of people who assume that people who are successful and you have all these big clients and that you have it all together. And I think that's one of the biggest lies, is people think I'm the only one that's having this problem.
Totally.
And it's absolutely not true. And it is such a sticking point for people to think that they're the only one and there's nobody else. So nobody else can really possibly understand. And maybe I'm crazy and I just need to like deal with it on my own. But as soon as you start sharing it with someone else, even just as ising it, letting it bubble up and expressing it out, it loses its power just in that moment. So that is so good. So good.
And the quicker you can get cleared, you can get back to the business of playing, which is, we all want to just be playing in our lives and going for things that we really care about. So having power outages is normal. And part of the game is just, okay, I'm playing a big game. I'm going to have power outages. Then I'm going to clear them. Then I'm going to get back on the field and just keep playing. So it's just a way of thinking about it and engaging in your life.
Yeah. So good. Well, ladies, thank you. I so appreciate, time flies.
Yeah.
And so I just really appreciate you being here and sharing a little taste of what you are doing to make an impact in the lives of individuals, not just big organizations, help them make more money and having bold visions for what their company can do, but individually, the people on the teams, helping them to change their lives. It's really powerful. So you guys are leaders of transformation by far. So awesome.
Thank you, Nicole.
And how do our listeners, if they want to learn more about you, where do they go and what have you got as a next step?
Okay, so what they can do, and because we work with, there's two things they could do. They could come to a Bold Vision workshop, which is free, and we offer one every single month. And they can go to fastforwardgroup.net/intro and sign up and just come and learn more about it. And they'll actually get the whole exercise. We'll share the exercise with them. So that's one thing they could do. And then the other thing, if you really want to take on the whole system, is to join Fast Forward membership, which we are launching in early 2022 for individuals. So you don't have to be working at one of the big companies that we work with. You could join Fast Forward membership, and that you could sign up for today at fastforwardgroup.net/membership. So those are probably the best two things you could do if you are interested in learning more.
Fantastic. I love it. I love what you guys are up to. So good.
Thank you. So great to be with you.
Thank you for having us on, Nicole.
It was truly a pleasure, truly a pleasure. And I love to see the interaction between the two of you as well. And I'm sure you ladies have a lot of fun in your workshops and working with people. So, yeah, highly recommend for our listeners to go to fastforwardgroup.net, find out more about what they're doing, /intro, /membership, and learn more about what Lisa and Wendy are doing. Also, go on leadersoftransformation.com. All the show notes for this show will be there. But also, of course, this is episode, 398. We've got 397 other episodes, amazing guests on this show. And the cool thing is you could type in Lisa or Wendy in the search field and their episode will come up. And the same thing is you could type in vision and their episode will come up as well as other episodes where that topic has come up. So it's a great resource library for you if you're listening and you're looking for some inspiration, want to get up and go and move on from where you are. Maybe you've been stuck or you just want to learn how to be a better leader. So I encourage you that. And as I said in the beginning, if you're interested in having a conversation with me about some coaching and consulting for what I do, you can go to the leadersoftransformation.com /coaching. That's available. There's information there. And highly recommend that you join us next week because we have another amazing guest next Tuesday. We go live every Tuesday. And join us then because we're just going to continue this journey and celebrating amazing difference makers and world changers. And so we appreciate you being here and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great day.
Bye.